Hey folks, how are we doing? Yeah, look, good morning. Last session before lunch. I can hear your stomachs rumbling. Don't worry, we're going to make this snappy. So my name's Ian Gibbs. I'm Insight and Planning Director at the DMA, and this is...
And I'm Radhika from IKEA, and I look after performance and effectiveness across all marketing channels.
Okay, and the reason Radhika's here is because I'm the Insight guy, I'm the data guy. I'm going to talk to you about some attention and effectiveness trends from the DMA's Databank. You know, it's easy for me to talk about this stuff. I don't have to do it on a day-to-day basis. So that's why Radhika's here. She's going to give us her hot takes on all the trends that I'm going to present to you right now. If you're not familiar with the DMA, we are the Data and Marketing Association with the voice of the data-driven marketing industry. Our members span agencies and advertisers and marketing service providers. And we're here to advise on best practice and regulatory compliance with all stages of the marketing process, from planning to execution to measurement and delivery. We are here to upskill the next generation of talent through our training institute, the IDM, and we also celebrate marketing excellence through our awards every year, the DMA Awards. And off the back of those awards, we've built this fantastic data bank, some of which I'm going to draw on today to show you some insights around attention and effectiveness. So yeah, big thanks to the guys at MadFest and obviously Lumen for sponsoring this stage. And look, you know, I know we're here to talk about attention, but I'm afraid I'm going to start by telling you that your board, your senior stakeholders, do not care about attention at all. In fact, we're at MadFest, so I'm going to tell you they don't give a shit about attention. Is that all right, MadFest folks? Look, the point is that they are here to sell insurance schemes. They're here to sell cars. They're not here to acquire minutes of attention. They are here to sell flat-pack furniture. They're not here to measure how long that you spend looking at ads. There are things that the board care about that you as marketers should increasingly care about. I'm not sure necessarily attention is one of them. Now, why do I think you as marketers care about attention? Because when we look at the DMA's effectiveness data bank, it actually tells us that the number of mentions of attention in DMA award entries is on an upward trajectory. So this is literally the proportion of entries into our awards every year that references attention. We're not necessarily saying this is like proper attention-based planning where people are like quantifying the amount of time spent with ads and planning and optimizing accordingly. But we are looking at people who are mentioning attention in the brief. They're trying to deal with a lack of attention somewhere or cut through somewhere else elsewhere. You can see in 2017, about 20% of entries mentioned attention. We're at an all-time high of 27% now. I was hoping this would be like a really nice, like straight upward line, but it isn't really. It's like an upward trajectory W-shaped curve, which is a very technical statistical term that I've just made up. Why have attention mentions dipped in 2020? I think probably COVID was part of it. Everyone was really obsessed with like short-term performance, just trying to stay afloat. Attention campaigns are kind of the preserve of brand building at the moment. Bit of a course correction in 2021. 2022, cost of living crisis. Again, quite a focus on performance rather than brand advertising, which is why I think attention dipped. Either way, the mention of attention is on a long-term upward trajectory. And just to that point around attention being the preserve of brand building, actually 28% of campaigns in our data bank are brand building campaigns. Tell us they've got a brand objective. Attention campaigns, well, 37% of them have a brand objective. So there is definitely a sense here that, yeah, brand and attention, you know, they kind of operate in the same wheelhouse. There are plenty of campaigns in our data bank which reference attention and our direct response or performance campaigns, I should add. But yeah, brand campaigns overrepresented. And when you look at the effectiveness data, you can see actually this focus of attention and brand building together is paying dividends. So our attention campaigns, that cohort of people who mention attention in their award entries, you can see here that they generate 50% more brand effects than the average campaign. So attention is linked to brand building. But they're also seeing 20% more business effects. So the sorts of stuff that the board do care about. They care about profit growth, shareholder value. They care about profitability and pricing power, that kind of thing, and market share growth. So actually, maybe the board should care about attention because it is linked to the outcomes they care about. No real difference in performance marketing effects. Not saying it doesn't have a detrimental impact on it, but attention very much works for brand and business. So, what we want to try and do now is try and figure out whether attention can help solve some of the key challenges that we see in the DMA's data bank. We have noticed that there is a crisis in performance marketing effectiveness. So on the left-hand side of this chart here, where am I going to stand? I will stand here for a second. You can see that performance marketing effectiveness has been on a decline in the last 5 years. Bit of a peak in 2020. We're all locked down at home. We were all more responsive to advertising because we didn't have anything better to do. Since then, it's been on a downward trajectory. It's not to say it's not working. It's still generating positive effects. But cost per acquisitions have been going up and response has been declining. There's been a little uptick in 2024. It remains to be seen about whether that continues. One of the reasons for that uptick is probably because brand effectiveness has been improving. Again, not saying we're investing enough in brand building, but actually we all know how brand and response work together. Brand gets people in the top of the funnel, stimulates future demand. If you don't do any brand building, there's nothing for the response advertising to activate. So perhaps this year-on-year growth in brand effectiveness is having this positive impact on response. Similarly, I think that brand effectiveness improving is having a nice positive impact on business effects as well. But what can we do to try to address this long-term decline in performance marketing effectiveness? For us, I think one of the answers is unlocking the value of creativity. This comes from our Value of Creativity report we released last year. We look at how DMA award judges have scored campaigns from 1 to 10. It's a subjective view on creativity. And actually, brand campaigns, in the green there, that's the top quartile of creativity. They're twice as likely as a response campaign or a performance campaign to be marked as highly creative. Performance campaigns are kind of missing a trick when it comes to creativity. Now, you might sit there and think, well, who cares about creativity in the performance space? I just want to get someone to buy something very quickly. I don't need to be creative. Well, you do when you look at these numbers, because actually our top creativity quartile for performance campaigns generates 21% higher ROI than the bottom quartile. So the least creative campaigns, their budgets have to work 21% harder just to keep up with the best performers in the market. And in an era of efficiency and CFOs sniffing around our budgets, we don't want to tell them that our budgets are inefficient. So we should be focusing on creativity. Highly creative campaigns also generate 4 times as many business effects, so the stuff that the board care about. So creativity really does matter. If we look at DMA award judges and we look at their attention campaigns, and I've realised I've done that terrible thing where I've taken the axis off, so it really exaggerates the impact of these numbers. But anyway, the point is that attention campaigns particularly score well for creativity. If it's an attention-driven campaign, it references attention in the award entry, it tends to do better in terms of award judges for creativity. So the other point to make is whether attention can help us unlock the value of measurement. Now, I've already mentioned that we quantify effectiveness in our data bank using response, brand, and business effects. We also have a 4th bucket of metrics that we use, which are called campaign effects. And that's when people tell us about effectiveness using behavioral metrics like, I don't know, clicks, likes, shares, reach, eyeballs on ads, video plays. They're not really measures of effectiveness at all. Useful campaign planning metrics, but not necessarily useful metrics for telling us about outcomes. And we know, actually, if you avoid those kind of campaign effects and some of those vanity metrics, focus on the stuff that matters, you drive 67% more business effects overall, because you're optimizing to the right thing. You're not obsessed with vanity metrics like clicks, likes, and shares. Now, if we look at our attention campaigns, I have to say our attention campaigns are slightly overrepresented for looking at those campaign effects. And probably because attention is quite a behavioral metric. You know, it doesn't tell us about how people think or feel. It's not a response metric. So I think attention probably needs to do more to link to business outcomes. 8% of attention campaigns quantify their effectiveness using metrics that the board care about versus 11% average. So I think some work for attention campaigns to do there. We also have just released a report on unlocking the value of customer data. It talks about these 2 worlds. We have the world of the CRM marketer. It's the world of first-party data, of email, direct mail, own platforms, marketing technology, CRM. And then we have the world of third-party data marketing. It tends to be paid media, above the line, brand building, acquisition. Now, we know, and we've proven with our data bank, that if you integrate your first-party data into your third-party data marketing efforts, there is an effectiveness multiplier. And it comes through activating audiences programmatically, building lookalike audiences, informing strategy and creativity. You can see we're an effectiveness multiplier across all channels, works particularly well for out-of-home and social, but, you know, there are effective multipliers across all paid channels. I guess the question for us is whether attention should be a piece of customer data that we are collecting and using to activate with our third-party data. I suspect it is, and we'll get Radhika's take on it in a second. And the final thing I wanted to say before we have a little bit of a chat is that actually now we're talking about paid media and our media channel selection, we can use attention data to completely reframe the value of media. If we use Lumen data and we look at the average amount of time people spend looking at TV ads and social ads and digital display, Combine it with other sources. I've taken sort of mail attention data from Mail. If you start costing up a minute, what it costs to acquire a minute of consumer attention, and I've just looked at it for ABC One Adults here, you get a completely different perspective on media value. Social display starts to look very expensive. Traditionally very expensive channels like direct mail actually come into line with everything else and aren't that expensive at all. TV does very well. So let's start thinking. If we care about attention, we care about the effects it generates, factor it into your media planning because it completely reframes value. And ultimately, what are we looking for with our media channel selection? We are looking for super touchpoint channels. We are looking for channels which drive disproportionate outcomes, that are highly creative, and have full funnel impact throughout the customer journey. They help us acquire new customers, whether that's with immediate direct response or stimulate future demand. They help us retain customers, and if we're lucky, they help those customers recommend our products and services to other people in this lovely virtuous circle. I know marketing doesn't work in this lovely perfect way, but super touchpoint channels should be what we're after. So look, here's some of the reports I've just referenced coming from the DMA, but look, it's easy for me to talk about this stuff, so Radhika, why don't we have a quick conversation now?
Perfect, and I love that we've got the IKEA brand colours here.
I know, I'm totally on brand today. Look, so what's your view on measuring attention? Is it just a nice behavioural metric that we care about as marketers, or is it something that we should really be talking to the board about and making them care about?
I think it's absolutely a necessity within the dimension of our marketing performance mix. As a brand, we cater for all home furnishing categories. We've got everything under one roof, or furniture, from home furniture accessories. But that means that we are competing with specialists in every area of the home. So it's a highly competitive category, highly competitive marketing landscape, and we have to be attention grabbing. We have to cut through. And I think it's only recently, but at a board and senior level, the concept of mental availability is understood. The need to cut through, the need to do things differently to stand out. And you made some points earlier, actually, that I think there is also an understanding that high brand awareness, high brand trust we can leverage those in terms of other business outcomes like price elasticity, for example, if there's more trust in the brand. And really that emotional connection is super important, and you can only do that by driving attention. And we try to do it in a way that's not done by our competitors. We don't sell beds or mattresses essentially the same way that the others do, because we need to do it in a different way because it's just so competitive.
And do you think, did your board get it? Do they get the kind of concept of attention? Do they think about it in that? Do they think about it in that
I think so. I think there is the acknowledgement and even I think a point of evidence would be the brand trackers that we do. Spontaneous awareness, brand communication awareness, emotional meaning, brand trust are part of our kind of ultimate goals. Of course there's sales and revenue, but I think the logic of you fill the funnel by increasing awareness consideration is really there. Does that mean that they are overtly confident or more confident investing in big brand activity versus performance activation led? There's probably still a kind of a little bit more confidence in the lower funnel work, and that because you see the short-term return, but there definitely is the appetite to do big attention brand activity through the funnel.
So, I've tried to suggest, we can see with the DMA data that attention campaigns, they overperform for brand, and there's lots of lovely evidence from Lumen as well that high attention equals movement in brand metrics. I'm trying to suggest that, attention might be a way of stemming this decline in overall performance marketing. But do you think does it matter, or do we just want someone to buy something very quickly and attention doesn't really matter?
No, I think it does matter. Yeah. Again, in the context of a highly competitive environment, social search, those performance channels, they are the online high streets. That's where the consumers are browsing, and then they're trying to make a decision, whether it's an impulse buy or doing some research. And I think that if you can emotionally connect with the consumer, if you have that trust, obviously, of all the work that's done with upper funnel, I believe you're much more likely to convert that consumer into a customer because they make that emotional connection with you. It's not just product price. You see the brand humor, the tone of voice, the way the brand acts. I think that kind of gives you the edge over others when there is a decision point to be made, purchase decision to be made. And we have, I'd say, in the last couple of years, been much more conscious about making sure our brand platform, The Wonderful Everyday, comes throughout the funnel. Of course, we spent a lot of time upper funnel, big brand activity to do that saliency job, and it's obviously priming to get people in the funnel. But it's super important because it's so competitive that a social or a search ad equally stands out, whether it's only just in tone of voice or visual identity.
Yeah. So is it something that you're measuring attention across brand and performance, or you'd like to? Where do you think you are in your measurement journey?
So, I think the trouble is that it's not consistent in terms of how you can measure attention throughout the channels. Of course, we started many years ago with viewability being a measure, but I think that's attention for attention's sake. Like what type of attention are you generating? What kind of mental availability, perceptions, emotional connections are you creating through that attention? And similarly, when it comes to performance marketing, it's harder to measure the attention. And what we've had to do is bolster some of those metrics with lift studies or consumer research, whether it's in a creative testing space, to then kind of bolster the learnings that we have on, yes, you have high brand recall, or you're getting that high viewability. We then do surveys, for example, within lift studies or within creative assessments to understand what message was taken out. Did we move a brand perception or increase a brand image in the consumer's mind? Or were we kind of increasing their likelihood to consider us? I think we have to bolster with other research because it's inconsistent across the channels of how you can measure and speak to viewability.
Do you think generally, though, we're getting better as marketers at linking what we're doing to like business outcomes that the board cares about, or is it getting harder? Or
I think our narrative is evolving. I think I'd say it's getting easier, but I don't want to say that it's easy. It's getting easier. I think that, for example, the award bank, whether it's DMA award bank or other award banks, the use of case studies helps us to give confidence internally. We can show, look, this is a brand that's done this type of activity. Are you more inclined to let us do this type of activity? So information from case studies is super helpful. But also the likes of MMM, for example, they can give a really robust measure of marketing's attribution versus other stuff. And our CFO loves the waterfall. Like, give him a waterfall chart.
What CFO doesn't?
Yeah, what CFO doesn't love a waterfall? But I think it's back to is it easier? I think personally we've been on a journey with our finance teams, and what we've learned is to really just bring them in early on in the journey. They don't want to see a polished deck. They don't want to see a polished deck. They want to see kind of, what are you thinking? Are we all kind of working towards the same common agenda? And explain why something like a turkey-sized meatball at Christmas, or wrapping the store in a blue bag, not going for the traditional hoarding, why things like that are important and why they feed the upper funnel, and bring them on in the journey and not at the end when they see the cost or it's just a request. So I think working with them in advance, not being polished, having that dialogue, explaining why you are ultimately supporting bottom line or brand growth, it's super important to have them on that journey. So it's easier now. I think we're getting our narrative tighter, but there's still a fight for brand versus kind of lower funnel activity. Absolutely.
Well, we've only got a minute left. I mean, that was over before we knew it, wasn't it? So look, I've got one final question for you, though, and I finished by talking about these super touchpoints channels. I mean, do you think about like some channels or touchpoints having more value and power than others? Yeah. And what are your super touchpoint channels at IKEA?
For us, we have quite a low shopping frequency, so mass reach and always-on presence is super important. So whenever they are in consideration for home furnishing, we're there top of mind. And I think that out-of-home is a fantastic channel for that. It does the mass reach across all demographics, but also it enables creativity for media and for those creating the content. Yeah. With media, they can choose impactful placements, doing something quite different, so they get to kind of play in that innovation space, and then the power of really highly emotive, creative comes to life. Yeah. Like recently with our Oxford Street store opening, we had obviously the traditional out-of-home taxi wraps, bus wraps, wrapping the Oxford Street circus and proximity close to that in blue. But then we also strapped furniture on top of a taxi. It was like a twinkle in the eye, a kind of a fun way a playful way to speak to our delivery services. And that's really a marriage of media and creative coming together, and I think out-of-home helped us to leverage that and do it in a high impactful way. Amazing. Okay. Well, look, guys, we're out of time. Thank you very much for your time today. Thank you to Lumen and Madfest for obviously hosting this stage. If you want to find out anything, any more about what we've been talking about, we have our reports, which I showed you on stage. Big thanks to Radhika as well, who's been at IKEA for over 20 years. Incredible, hey? But yes, enjoy the rest of Madfest. Thank you very much.